Hello and welcome to another episode of the Footy Form Guide podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Wally, joined as always by my good mate, Harro. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Yeah, really good. I said last week, winter is coming, Wally. And in my household, winter is otherwise known as the unders season. And I think the unders season has hit. We saw, I think it was at 6 out of 7 games go unders. And that's just
Yep.
a sign that we have actually hit winter now. And we're going to get some proper sort of big boy footy.
Nice. You rugged up for it too, mate, which is appropriate.
Yep. Yeah, no, rugged up, mate. All good.
See, it's different now because people can see us, Harro, because we're on YouTube now. And, of course, on that, make sure you subscribe, YouTube. That way you get your notifications come through. Give us a like, give us a comment, get around us, of course, share with your friends. All right, we'll get into the footy this week. We've got another bye round, just the two teams missing in the Dockers and Saints. But before we do, Harro, we're, of course, going to look at what we got right and wrong from last weekend and then go to some questions off social, of which we've got some crackers this week. So we're going to get stuck right into that. But highlights, lowlights. Pretty good weekend, Harro, all in all.
Yeah, all in all, mate, I did, as we do, a bit of a betting review before I came on today, and I think we were pretty spot on in about 5 of the 7 games. I think there's 2 there that we missed on, but otherwise, like, pretty good going. So a few of the highlights, mate, I just have a look back, and we had the unders in the Hawks and Pies game, and that wasn't looking too good early doors, but I think it was just a 2-goal last quarter. That ended up covering pretty well. We obviously the Crows, mate. We were big on the Crows. We kind of talked about them being in the mix for the best bet, and they absolutely smashed the Swans. And also, you know, they kept the Swans under their own line as well. But look, this was all great. The real highlight of the week, for those who follow us on Twitter, they would know. But nailing this Saturday train, which paid $22, mate. That was an absolute highlight for all Footy Form Guide followers, and for us personally, well, it was a lot of fun. And thank God we got that last leg. I think it was 14 legs, 13 legs won comfortably. The last leg was Chad Warner, and he got home with the bare 19, thanks to the tab +1. So we're very thankful there, mate. It was a good result.
Yeah, we're very lucky there. I had some people tell me too, Harry, that they actually had the singles or the individual SGMs as well. So a bit of a fill up for everyone, which was great. Now, you say we got a couple wrong. I will just say, caveat this: Melbourne should have looked after us in that game. I know we got the Melbourne Saints game wrong, but we kind of didn't. I mean, their scoring was ridiculous. They should have covered the totals, and Melbourne probably should have won this one.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously we want to review our bets and make sure that our best is actually a good bet, whether it wins or loses. And you don't really know when a side comes out and kicks 7 goals, 21. I mean, it doesn't even include the snap that Cozzy Pickett had from 15 metres out, didn't even make the distance early in the game. And that one went straight up the other end for a Saints goal. And I think that was indicative of that bet. You know, anything that the D's touched went to shit, and anything that the Saints touched was just gold. So, look, that was disappointing. It was our best last week, and we are having a tough run with these bests. And I keep coming back to them. Most of the ones that we've lost, we can find pretty good reasons that they weren't so much a bad bet, that we've just copped a bit of a bad beat, so to speak. And when a side kicks 7 goals, 21, it's sort of out of your hands, isn't it? You've done the work, found the bet. They just didn't hold up their side of the bargain. So, mate, I would say that was definitely our low light for the week.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, mate, let's get stuck into some questions off social. We do have a few, so we'll whip through them. Mug Punter says 6 of 7 games went under totals last round. Accuracy was one problem, but do we expect to bounce the other way this week? Or, Harro, is it winter? Is it time for unders?
No, I do feel that we're in unders season now, and things will tend more to that side rather than seeing a bounce back the other way. We will see it flip again when we see more sides who are confirmed out of finals and they can't get anywhere in their ladder position, they'll open back up again. But we can see some real defensive play. And you look at the sides going the best at the moment, Collingwood and Adelaide, I'd probably say 2 of them. Well, they've conceded the least points over the last sort of 5 or 6 weeks. And so defense is, really starting to play its role. But then also conditions the grounds are a bit heavier. All that sort of stuff. Winter does bring the scoring down overall.
Certainly does, Harry. Wait to hear some of these lines. A few of them seem quite low. So I think that the market have already reacted. Our man Yab says, do we see the bye teams from last week perform poorly this week as we have in the past? So obviously that's the Dogs, Blues, Port and North. Do we look at head-to-head lines? I mean, we'll look at those individually. But Harrow, it's a good question. Where do you stand on the coming in first up off the bye?
Well, it can go both ways sometimes, and it can also cause like some volatility in player positions and stuff like that. I think you will see some sides come back with a few changes, and so you can, that can throw things out a little bit. But it does go both ways. Sometimes teams come back off a bye energized and refreshed. I think we saw that with Carlton last year. But other teams come back off a bye a little bit sluggish and running into a side that perhaps has got a good run of form. So it can either break form or it can help to re-establish some good form. So it is a case-by-case thing. We do see the bye rounds do throw up some stranger results than what we see throughout the rest of the season. Does often happen.
All right, very good, mate. Next question, Triple P Sports. Long live the train. Is there a reason for leaving out certain players that you mentioned as top matchups on the pod? For example, this is May, who had 21, and we spoke about on the pod, but we didn't actually include May in the train.
Yeah, no, I won't. Look, often when you're putting these bets together, I just view May as as a single bet on his own rather than being part of a train. And because I want to get a level of certainty with the train selections. And so I'm generally taking a little bit of a lower line, but more certain selections where I really like Stephen May, but, I just didn't think that he fit the train or for that day anyway. And so, we will mix things up a little bit. And also when I do the trains, I've actually got a lot more information at hand than when we're mentioning things on the podcast. So, teams are obviously out and I've had a bit more time to think about it as well. So not everything that we mention on the pod will end up in a train.
Yep. And fair enough too. And look, as we always say on X, on Twitter, follow us there, footyfgpod. That is where we have the more up-to-date information. So the trains, things like that. May still definitely a bet. The other thing is if you're getting $2 about one player to do something, it is obviously, even if you're ahead of the market, you might still only be a 65% chance of getting that bet up, even though it's a 50-50 in terms of the price. So that's still a bet, but you don't really want those sort of things going into your train because the idea of the train is to build with more certain bets over the day and try and take advantage of a lot more things that are going to happen, turning it into bigger odds. Otherwise, we just do $1-2 player each game. So I think that, which Harrow, maybe that's the evolution of the train. We can look at that as well. We can have different sorts of trains over the weekend. Rename the podcast to the Footy Train Podcast. We can just take this to a whole new level.
We do. If we're talking about the train, and we do have to give some credit to Puntosaurus, who actually came up. Well, he was the first person I saw post a train. And so bit of credit to Puntosaurus because we can't take all the credit, Wally.
Yeah, very, very good. Snow says, seen some punters find some big value on backing Jezza for 15. Like this concept of backing key position players for disposals. Any idea who could get a few? And I think, we spoke about May as a key defender as opposed to a key forward. We did this a bit in the last couple of years, Harrow, with Danaher. And especially if we thought Danaher was going to be that second ruck, we always knew that 15 was a good place to be playing in. Is there any like that maybe we want to be keeping an eye out for?
Look, I feel that with the key position forwards especially, like they've always got a bloke assigned and his job is not to get the footy but to stop his opponent. And so I'm more focusing on guys that the opposition are going to say, look, we don't mind if he gets the footy. And look, Bailey Smith's probably a great example of this. Although he's doing great things, I did see some stats getting around on some of the shows this week, that his actual ball use is pretty bad. it's rating quite low. And so I think opposition coaches, he's just one that they're like, okay. And we talked about this last week with Holmes is the one that Bevo would tag, not Smith. So teams are letting him get the footy because he's not that damaging. Teams aren't going to let the full forward get a lot of footy because he's probably going to kick a bag of goals. So I do feel like there's a bit of volatility there, but you can pick certain ones. I remember I had a good run with Tim Membry because you're getting good odds because he was a key forward, but his role was in the last 5 minutes of every quarter to go and play in the back line. So he was getting 2 or 3 easy kicks a quarter playing in the back line. Or, as we saw with Danaher, he's got a second role. He's going up and playing ruck. So there are guys, there probably are other ones out there at the moment, but my focus doesn't so much go on to the key forwards with the disposals, no.
Yep. Okay. Dan, you said over the weekend that these regressed to the mean. How do you weigh this up against a team's form? In such a competitive league, should it be more of a consideration with mid-table sides?
Yeah, so I guess the question is like a team, should you consider a team's average form over the long term compared to their recent form? And as I said, I felt like the D's regressed to the mean. And it was, for me, for that comment was more about like the look of the way they were playing as well. Like they, previous weeks they were changing angles, their ball movement was really good. Then on the weekend, it was all just like old D's, long down the line, bombs to the forward 50, without really any great method to it. I probably meant that more so with my comment. But in terms of, assessing longer term form, this is what the rating systems are great for. And I've pointed out a few if people want to go and follow them. Like Matter of Stats is the one, especially by a guy named Tony Cork, and I think he's really got it wired with rating systems. And rating systems will not overreact to short-term form. So, for instance, they wouldn't have overreacted to the Demons' previous 2 games. They would have had their performance closer to the mean against, obviously for the weekend. So, look, there's 2 ways to go about it. Sometimes, I like to have a combination. I like to take into account their longer-term form, and really for me, the D's longer-term form was coming out slightly ahead of the Saints. Their short-term form was coming out way ahead of the Saints. So, it's all to be there, all to be weighed up and factored into it, mate.
I don't know any way you could have cut that game that you would think St Kilda would win, apart from Melbourne just missing the goals so many times. Like that's the bottom line in that one.
Yeah.
Our man Dyla Turden, halfway point in the season. What have you learnt from the state about which players teams? What have you learnt from the stats about which players teams to back and which ones to avoid for disposal and goal multi? So essentially, what have we learned so far and what are our trends? I think is a cleaner way of saying that than I just made a breakfast of.
Actually, it's worth looking at games in. So you can look at the whole season, and obviously, like I've been using the Bet Sniper, which is giving us information about, where teams are conceding possessions to what area of the ground and whatnot. But also, we're like 11 games in now. It's good also just to look at the last 5 games as well. Use that little tab there. You can isolate the last 5 games, and it does paint a little bit of a different story. So I like to look at both last 5 games and the whole season. And there's definitely some trends that have maintained from previous seasons, and there's definitely old trends that are re-emerging and whatnot as well. And one that I'm seeing, at the moment is midfielders against the Gold Coast Suns. That's something I think's quite it's something. If they're the last, you put the last 5 weeks sample in, and they're coming up number 1. But if you use the whole season, I think they're coming in 4th or something like that. I know it's a trend that goes back through Dimmer Hardwick coach teams. So that's one little one. And also just looking at overall disposal numbers. And I know Adelaide are conceding the least disposals in the comp right now. I know Brisbane are quite low in how many disposals they're conceding. And so you do want to be a little bit more cautious. If a team is if the AFL average disposals conceded is 360, and you see that the Crows are only conceding 320, well, that's taking 2 disposals off per player, okay, for the opposition on average. And that sort of stuff is really worth factoring in when when you're trying to work out whether this is a good game or a bad game to be having those disposal multis in or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can just wait for Freo to play Gold Coast in the wet and have a crack at the all the contested possession. So there you go. One of the very key and profitable legs of the train, of course. Anthony asked, when placing an SGM, adding multiple anytime goal scorers or 2+ goal scorers seems riskier than placing a pure disposal SGM. Any thoughts on this, or am I blighted by personal experience? I think off the bat, it is, unless like if you're a forward that's going to get a lot of opportunities, that's one thing. But over a game, if you're collecting disposal, you're getting plenty of opportunities around the ground to get the ball. Things have to go a little bit more right for you to kick goals, because you've got actual disposal, and then you need to be in the right position on the ground and have the accuracy. So there's a lot more variables to kicking a goal than there is to getting a ball on the half-back line. And it doesn't matter if you kick it out of bounds on the full, grub it along the ground, whatever it is, it still counts as a disposal. We're big on the disposals, Harro, because we take advantage of the Tab +1 promo, right? So that's we look at that and we find that is a great way to bet into those markets, because you're getting a discount straight away before anything. Wouldn't mind a Tab +1 goal promo, Harro, for anytime goal scorers. That'd be good.
Yeah, I actually do have a couple of thoughts on this, Wally, and
Great.
I tend not to have goal kicker multis so much, unless I think one team's gonna, the market's got them kicking like a score like 90, but I think they're going to kick 130. Then I might think, all right, well, there's some contingency at play, the goal kicker odds. Maybe I'll mix a few of them together. But it's a little bit like disposals. It's a higher number involved, so there's less variance. A little bit like soccer. Soccer you can win with 1-0. But AFL footy it's made up of like about 50 or 60 scores. So you're more likely to get that sort of more consistent result, where a soccer match can literally be decided on one kick, if you know what I mean. I feel like a goal kicker bet can be decided basically on one moment, where it comes off or not. Where a disposal bet, you're asking a guy to get 15 disposals, it's an accumulative effect of whether he's going to be around the footy enough, and it kind of just works out with a lot less variance on the disposal side. Goal kicker bets, I don't mind having them. And we had a good one on the weekend with Weddle, where we just found a good price about a guy who's getting goals, fairly consistently. But I'd rather have those sorts of bets in a single, or as opposed to having it in a multi, just because there's, a little bit less surety there in terms of, the goal kicker bets.
Yeah. And we've seen the last 2 weeks perfect examples of this. Two of the better key forwards in the comp, one that may be the best, and Jesse Hogan, having no goals against Richmond, which is extraordinary. No Bolter and no goals for Hogan is just amazing. And the week before that, Freo got the dream matchup of Port Adelaide, who obviously allow a lot of goals to key forwards, and Tracy didn't feature in that either, and they won the game comfortably. So we've seen how hard it can be. That being said, I'm big on Hogan this week for goals against Port, the two worlds combined. We move on. Matt, does the Tab 1 disposal promo kick in? When does it kick in for single bets? Xavier O'Halloran was a sick beat. Yeah, it does. It's singles and multis and SGMs. Excuse me, Harro. That's right, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Rolsey, how important does the bye play into your rankings and thoughts? Are teams particularly keen, desperate to win heading into the bye, like the Saints last week? Are teams well rested and play better coming off the bye? Is it disruptive to their momentum? We spoke briefly about teams coming off the bye. Harro, I'm interested to get your thoughts on teams going into the bye.
Yeah, no, I don't have a big thought on that. But the only thing I do know is that the teams who have their bye last, they can be really running out of steam by the time they hit that bye. And they could be playing a team that's had a break 2 weeks earlier. I've seen this sort of situation pop up before. And you can see those teams that haven't had their bye really starting to tire, meeting a team that's just been freshened up. So there are little sort of different areas that you will find with these bye rounds and the way it can work out. and also the team that's fresh can also come back a little bit off their tucker as well. So and some teams they're going really well. They might not want their bye. They just want to keep rolling with it. So I love the buys. I think it does throw in some different factors that you need to think about when you're punting as well, and how different teams manage it as well is also something that's of interest.
Yep, very, very good. Last one, Michael. How many games does it take you guys for you guys to take trends of teams seriously? So, what is a trend, Harro, for you?
Well, things change so quickly, Wally. If something happens like 2 weeks in a row, I'm trying to be onto it because you don't want to be late to these things because if you only get a few weeks of being early. So I'm constantly you're really watching every game and saying, okay, this is on notice. If this happens again next week, this is something that's happened 2 weeks in a row now. It could become a trend. But look, there are the ones that you love the most are the ones that are just carrying on for like seasons and carrying 2-3 seasons and all this sort of stuff. But I'm looking for these things every week to catch a new trend, or see a different style in play emerge. And look, there's a really good one, Wally, and I'll talk about it again later. But you watch what happened to the Crows. They conceded 121 points against the Cats back in round 5. I listened to their coach's press conference afterwards, and he said, "Look, we're not going to be winning anything if we're going to be conceding 90 points a game." Since then, the Crows have averaged 62 points against every team that's played them has been under their total point line.
Yeah.
So a trend emerged in 1 week. You've just got to be onto them. You just got to be onto them. That's all it is. That's the hard part too.
Yeah, it is, mate. It is. And look, they're rare. The whole St Kilda against defenders and wingers and Hawthorn mids. We got, like, you see Collingwood giving up the disposal, Richmond to mids and defenders. Sometimes it aligns with their position, but there's other great teams like Collingwood who have been really at the top of their game. That still they give up a level of disposal, which it's not always the worst teams. So it's always keeping an eye out for, but we don't get those running through like we've had the last couple of years. They are few and far between the ones that last all year, aren't they? So it's a very, very good shout. Stick on them and try and make hay. All right, mate, let's get into the games. Thursday night. I don't know if this is an exciting game. A look away. I don't know what to expect here. Western Bulldogs taking on Hawthorn, of course, at Marvel on Thursday night footy. This probably was more tantalising a few weeks ago, but now it's all okay. We've got a team that we've spoken about. They're coming in off the bye in the Dogs, and they look really good. They're starting to get this list humming and these players back. Hawthorn's obviously in desperate need of a win. Still have a couple more weeks before the bye, so that will be a welcome break for them. Doggies are $1.52. Hawthorn's $2.60. The line's a couple of goals at the moment, and the total is 171.5, Harro. Talk us through this under the dome to kick off the round.
Yeah, interesting. I've had a good look at these two teams actually, and one thing that I actually didn't know, neither side has actually beaten a real contender this year. So they both have one win against the top 8 side, and it was both against the Giants, who would probably be really lucky to be calling themselves the top 8 team right now. So this is actually a massive game for one of these sides to stake a claim to being, in a top 8 sort of position and actually having earned it. Because, they've both basically filled up against lower ranked sides all year. And as impressive as the Doggies especially have been, they still haven't really got a scalp. So, look, they'll be very keen coming back off their bye. Obviously, Hawthorn, I think they will have been in the room of mirrors all week this week, probably mouth guards in at training, all that sort of stuff. You do have to be a bit wary of sides who have that mindset, and I think that they'll definitely be bringing that this week. For me, I go back to listening to Chris Scott when he played the Bulldogs down at Geelong in his post-game presser, and he was full of praise for the Bulldogs, and he's a pretty good judge, and he basically said that I'm glad that we got these guys at the Cattery on a little bit slippery night, because I think these guys would be unbeatable at Marvel. And I tend to agree. I think the Doggies at Marvel are just about unopposable right now. And I do take those words from Chris Scott genuine, and I think that the Dogs should have beaten Geelong. Had more scoring shots, one expected scoring, all that sort of stuff. And I think Scotty knew that, and he said, "Thank God we didn't play him down at Marvel because they wouldn't have been winning." Hawthorn now get the Doggies at Marvel, and so I'm just going to rule out a bet on Hawthorn just based on I think the Dogs at this venue are probably one of the tougher assignments in footy. Sammy Mitchell, mate, I listened to all these press conferences. I've never heard him be like, maybe snarky might be the word for it, or he was genuinely not happy, was he? And even
he's angry.
A couple of reporters. I've never seen Sammy Mitchell like that. I don't know if you have. So that I found.
No, he's very measured, Harro. He's very, very measured, and that's what we've seen. But I think that he's also been. I feel like he's been pretty honest in his presses, and he said this. He said this way. He goes, "We're miles off it," and he kind of doesn't know where we're at. So this is going to be very interesting to see how this unfolds this week. Mouth guards at training, a couple. I've heard this in the media. That should happen last week after the Brisbane effort. So I don't know how they're going to bounce back. A team, Doggies under the lid, feels like one of the toughest assignments in footy at the moment. It just does. So I don't know. What are our angles here, Harro?
Well, look, I think first thing I think straight to here is last 5 weeks, this Hawthorn midfield's really struggling. And they're conceding, I think, number one in the midfield to opposition inside mids last 5 weeks. I can check that, but it's high anyway. And now they come up against the Doggies, who are ranked number one in clearances in the comp. So I feel like they're going to be put at a bit of a disadvantage. Like it's a bad matchup when the Hawthorn midfield is already struggling. Dogs probably aren't the team you want to get. And so I'm looking at Libba. Like Libba 30, he's done it, I think, the last 3 weeks. You just go through like the Hawks, what they've been conceding. Dacos 32 on the weekend, Neil 32 before that, Anderson 35 and Rao 29 before that, Butters 33, Horne-Francis 29 before that. All 3 Blues main mids all got 28 plus, and it's that inside bull type, which is like a Libba or a Richards. So it could really be all of the Bulldogs mids could probably have big games, and so from a disposals point of view, I think that's where we want to be focusing. Like we've got the team that's 15th for clearances coming up against the team that's first. I feel like it's a bad matchup for the Hawks. Ratings-wise, I've actually got the Dogs 24 points ahead, including home ground advantage. We got an 11-point line here, so also I would be happy enough, so long as the Doggies come back off their bye with enough energy, I think that they'll be beating the line, and I think after this week will be the time to start looking to back Hawks to make the 8 or make the top 4 if we get any odds after another loss, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Adelaide in Tassie the following week, which I think they're going towards the bye as well. So that definitely winnable down there. It's a different beast down there. It's going to be night footy down there as well, which is very foreign if you haven't experienced it for other clubs. So we'll wait and see on that. It might be the time. I think if the Doggies do a number on the Hawks here, the price will be quite good. Obviously, we called that out at $6.50 and then again at $5.50 for those that decided to get on board with the view to cash out or back again. All right, we move to Friday night, Adelaide, Brisbane. I'll tell you what, good first 2 games of footy. We should see 2 good games of footy kicking us off here Thursday and Friday night after we have had a number of questionable ones in the previous month or so. Adelaide, Brisbane. Adelaide $1.60, Brisbane $2.34. The line's 8.5, 160.5 points. This plays into that trend you're talking about, Harro. Adelaide Oval, the Crows, you would have thought a higher line, but not anymore. The markets have now adjusted and they have been corrected to show what we've been seeing, which is Adelaide are not conceding a huge amount of score. Really interested here. Feels like that sort of game that Brisbane's backs are starting to be a little bit against the wall again after a not great performance at home and not an amazing month. They had the one good performance against Hawthorn. Anytime Brisbane's over that $2, you've got to entertain it. But keen to hear your thoughts, mate.
Well, this is it. I thought, and I mentioned this the other week, I trust the Lions more when they're playing a contender than when they're playing, a non-contender. And we saw that again on the weekend. The Lions, they obviously got beaten at the line by the Dons. And look, I think they had the game killed at quarter time, basically. Whatever happened after that point, well done to the Dons. They made them fight it out a little bit at the end, but the game really was over at quarter time. And I think that I'm just going to look to back the Crows when the Lions, when you know that they need to turn up. They're not going to be taking the Crows lightly, of course. So I do factor a potential bet on the Lions here. Anytime I reckon you're getting the Lions over, $2 or $2.30, I think they are here. They've got to be worth consider because they probably are the best in it. Wally, we are looking at rain in this one though, mate. 1 to 15 mil projected. Okay, and I was looking to back unders in this game without the rain. So with the with the potential rain coming, I've treated this I'm going to assess it like it is a wet weather game rather than treating it like it's not. I look at the two performances by Brisbane in the wet this year. They beat the Gold Coast Suns and the Cats in both impressive looking performances. The Crows had one wet game and it was against the Giants, and they also won that. Okay, so that's all lining up okay. I know Brisbane are good in the wet though. I don't have any doubts about that. But look, I also see here from a disposals point of view, when I look at those two games that Brisbane played in the wet, first Geelong, Ashcroft 33 disposals, McCluggage 30. Okay, against Gold Coast, Ashcroft 34 disposals, McCluggage 30. So I feel like these are the two guys who like the conditions the most.
Is that Will Ashcroft, just to be clear?
Will Ashcroft, yeah.
Yep, great. Not Levi, yep. Beautiful.
And you can combine those two at the tab to have 24, you're getting $2.15. If you wanted to combine them both to have 29, plus you're looking at $5.50.
Now we're talking.
These are our wet weather boys. They've done it. They've smashed it in their last two wet weather games. And so that might be where you want to put your focus. I wouldn't probably be really keen on playing disposals outside of that. We are looking at the Crows. They're giving up the 18th most disposals in the comp, and the Lions, I think, the 14th. And the Lions are always low. So I think if this had been a dry game, I probably wouldn't be looking to play the disposals so much unless there was some really good value there. But given I think that the conditions are going to suit these few certain players, I'm happy to play the McCluggage and the Will Ashcroft type bets. And also, look, I'm definitely still angling to have a bet on the under. I think this game we saw that now Adelaide are, I think, the number one defense in the last 6 games. They're only conceding 62 points in those last 6 games. We know that also Brisbane defend really well also. And so, I'm still happy to have a play under that 160, mate. If we get rain, fantastic. If we don't, I still think we've got a fair bet.
Very good, mate. So Lions, total under, Ashcroft, McCluggage for disposals. Doesn't get much more simple than that. Love it. All right, we move on to Saturday's games. Richmond v Sydney at the MCG. We've seen this movie last year, and Sydney were going better and Richmond were probably going worse. So I'll leave that with you. Richmond is $2.71 at home. Now, given the time of the game and the city it's in, I'm assuming Noah Bolter's playing. Sydney are $1.47 after what is one of the most pathetic performances I've seen. To turn that out in front of your 2005 premiership team that were, and we've heard this enough throughout the week, but mate, that was a team that were hard and strong and just never gave up and broke a 72-year drought. To turn up and play like that in front of them, there has to be a response. I'm just looking at it, they're going, you know what? Maybe they're done. I know there's injuries all over the park. The depth is not there. That's all been found out. And the Tigs keep defying everything we think and keep turning up and just trying and putting effort in and getting to contests. I like Richmond at the 271, or you got a 13.5 point head start. The total, again, is relatively low. It's 164.5.
Yeah, look, I don't mind that either, Wally. I quite like the Tigers here as well. Look, their form just has these two sides reasonably close. Their most recent form, especially. Um, Having said that, like the whole season's form, the Swans' form is still quite a
Mm.
bit stronger. I actually found it a little bit. I thought it was. I thought the commentators in this game, the post game and whatnot, and the media in general afterwards, to be giving Cox, a hard time about how his team's performing. I mean, you take the talent out of that Sydney team, take that out of any team, they're not going anywhere.
No.
So these commentators are giving him a hard time, saying he's, whatever, he's not up to the job or whatever. Or, I mean, just have a look at the blokes he's got sitting on the sidelines and think really how else would he go about it. So, and they
Mm.
did stand up for a while. They did defy this injury list earlier in the season, but it's just too much. And it's obviously taken its toll now as the season's got a bit longer for sure. So, my first area I looked here though, Wally, was like the Tigers are on an 8-game run on the unders, and they play a Swans team who cannot score right now, and they get Noah Bolter back. And look, you can get the Swannies to score under 88.5, their own individual score. Swans haven't been near scoring 89 points for quite a while now. I think you'd have to go back to when they played North Melbourne back in about round 4, when North Melbourne was stinking it up. So Tigers, you go through their backline like name for name and stuff as well. It's still a really strong backline, and they're not really conceding over this 89 anyway. As we saw, they lost to the Giants on the weekend. They didn't concede 89. Um,
Mm.
and so that's where my main bet in this one wants to be, mate. I really like that line of thinking. We've seen the Swans, they're not getting those easy scores because they just don't have those key position forwards who can take a mark, 20 out and kick a goal. And that's where you get your easy goals from. Playing outside of that, we've seen that the Tigers, they don't really tag. And when Heaney and Warner aren't getting severe attention like what they did on the weekend against Adelaide, they are both, a good chance to get their 24 plus here. I know Richmond, if you just take the season as a whole, have conceded the most to inside mids. Those boys are too proud. They will be showing up this week, Warner and Heaney, the two leaders in that midfield, and I expect them both to get plenty of the footy. So happy to play that as well, mate.
Great, absolutely. So a bit of Warner and Haynes action. Swans under, Richmond the line could be a play there too. All right, Saturday Arvo, another good game. There's a lot of good. I reckon there is only one game in this that looks one-sided, but anything can happen in footy, and all the other games are. I mean, Melbourne Collingwood later is one-sided, but it doesn't matter. It's a King's birthday on Monday. It's a public holiday, big freeze. It's a great vibe. This is a great round of footy though. Geelong Gold Coast. Twilight down at GMHPA. Geelong's $1.39. Gold Coast is $3.02. The line's 17.5. The total over under is 172.5. Look, Gold Coast disappointing, losing that game at home that they probably should have won if that they were really seriously about that top 4 position. It doesn't get any easier here. But we're talking about a good football side with one of the hottest midfielders in it at the moment in Gold Coast, Noah Anderson, with a really good supporting cast of Rao and Miller coming down and taking on Smith and Holmes and Jezza. Like this, I don't know. I like to look at this. I think Geelong get the job done, but it sets up as a really good game.
No, I quite like Geelong here actually, mate. I just think like the Gold Coast form is starting to waver a little bit. This post-Darwin form, which we've seen them fall off the perch a little bit post-Darwin in the past, and now they come down to, like, we think the doggies at Marvel is a tough assignment. Well, the Cats at the Cattery it's got to be equally as tough as that. So against just a really professional outfit in the Cats, I expect the Cats to get the job done here and beat that 3-goal line. So one area I also look here is the Gold Coast are conceding number 1 to inside mids in the last 5 weeks, and some of these numbers are off the charts, mate. So we did see Sarong, Jackson and Brayshaw all get 27 plus on the weekend. Jackson playing as a pure midfielder. That was interesting. I liked it, actually.
Bizarre. It was good, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's a good player. Steele 33. I don't think Steele's had 33 disposals in a game for a long time apart from that one. Newcombe 29, Libba 35, Bont 29, Richards 31. We could keep going. The Gold Coast are conceding plenty to inside mid. So here we get Smith and Holmes. Again, we like Smith and Holmes against West Coast, and I think they back it up here, mate. And we can follow some similar bets to what we had last week with them. The other area I actually liked, and I know we've talked a lot about the unders, but I feel like this is one game that might likely go over. Just the style of these two sides. They both play pretty direct footy. They just basically pick the shortest course to goal and go straight for it. And I think that's a really good way to play. I think it's a finals brand of footy. I think both sides are going to be there, playing that style of footy. And it's an attacking style of footy. I think this is going to be a really good game to watch. We saw this game between these two sides last year make up at 260 points, Wally.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think we're going to get that again, but I do think with the line set in around that 171, 172 mark, these two sides, they're clearing that more often than not. And I think that this lines up quite well for a bet on the overs.
Yep. Very good, mate, there. So Geelong line, Smith and Holmes disposals, and total match points over. Saturday night sees the Giants host Port Adelaide in, of course, Canberra. Giants are $1.30 after escaping against the Tigers. Port are $3.57. Their season obviously looks gone. They come in off a bye. It'll be interesting to see how they approach it. The line's 21.5. I'm really keen on Jez here. I'm not Jez. On Jesse Hogan, sorry. Jez Denning, mate. Well, much of a muchness. Two absolute gun key forwards that are both like playing well at parts this year. But Jesse not as great in the last couple of weeks. But I just see this as a great opportunity for him. Get back into form, playing against the team that allow a lot of goals, two key forwards coming off the bye. So that's an area I want to play in. But let's talk about the game overall before we look at any of the individual players. 21.5 point line. Harro, do you like it?
I don't know what I'm going to get from these two sides. There's just such volatility in their performances. And so forced to bet. In these types of games, I just like to take the big price. And I think, if Richmond can really, Richmond should have won that, a lot more scoring shots. They outplayed GWS for the whole night, apart from the last quarter. And this is actually at Monica as well, mate. And the GWS don't go as well. Yeah, they don't go as well there.
Yeah, it's Canberra. And
I feel like when you're getting $3.60 about Port, who they could turn up and play like they did against the Bulldogs and be terrible. But if they turn up and play like they did against the Hawks, they're winning this game. And I think there's enough chance. Look, this isn't a game you'd ever stake big money on, because I feel like you really don't know what you're going to get out of these two teams. But it's the sort of game where we probably will see the result will probably not fall anywhere near that 21-point line. You could end up with like Port Adelaide winning by 20 points. You could get a big price about that sort of thing as well. I know Port Adelaide, $6.50 on the try bet to win by 16 points. That wouldn't surprise me. I'm just not sure what we're going to get from GWS, and especially that midfield. That's pretty understocked right now, that GWS midfield. And I saw Kelly came back on the weekend. I don't think he is fully fit. They played him out on the wing the whole night. And that GWS midfield is just not going to cut it. Port actually have a great midfield if they can get all those guys up there and firing and going well. I think we'll see some tagging going on in this game for sure. So, just be aware that Butters is probably going to get the Bedford tag, isn't he? That's a pretty obvious one. We saw the Richmond midfielders actually go to town on GWS. And so it wouldn't surprise me if you looked outside of Butters, the rest of the guys in that Port Adelaide midfield could have a real fill-up. And, a guy like Ollie Wines, he's not going to get the attention. And I could see him, I think if Jacob Hopper can have a big day, why couldn't Ollie Wines? And so these are the types of areas. Pick the guys in the midfield who aren't likely to get the tag. And I think we'll see Drew go around with Green, won't we? That's another obvious one. So, I think that they're the kind of areas we want to play in this one. avoid the guys that are probably going to get tagged. The rest of those guys in that Port midfield should go really well. And maybe try and find a big price about Port winning at a margin, or just to maybe, I'm only playing big prices in this one, mate. Too much volatility to be playing a line bet.
And then, don't forget as well, like, Port Adelaide's still got a lot of injuries here. You got no Horn-Francis. There's no Farrell. I'm assuming Darcy Byrne-Jones comes back in. I'm just having a look through it now. And then I start to look. Lukosius is probably still a week away. So there's still Lockie Jones obviously out. There's a number of players that aren't going to be playing this. Would we consider Lockie Whitfield and Rosie for disposals here,
Definitely
Harrow? Is that
Rosie.
an area we play?
100% with Rosie, unless you think Bedford might go to him, but he always tags a midfielder. Yeah. So
I just can't. I can't imagine it. There is no Horn-Francis. Rosie's probably going to play out the back. Like, it's the perfect game to tag Butters, isn't it? Where you go, we've got one clear target in their midfield that we can go after, and it's not going to be Wines. Drew's going to go to Green. All right, there you go. And Lockie Ashley's the other one that you don't. I just don't. I know he's having a good year, but in what world are you tagging Lockie Ashley and leaving Tom Green alone? You're just not.
Port are a little bit stingy to those types of players. So it's running, those. Yeah, so I'd rather Rosie.
Okay.
Because I think that the Giants.
Rosie. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Go with that. All right, Sunday games. North Melbourne, West Coast. We had the Battle of the Spoon a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what you call this because I think Richmond's avoided. I think West Coast have probably got it. North Melbourne's $1.59. West Coast $2.37. But this isn't in Melbourne. This isn't in Tassie. This isn't at Blundstone. This is in Bunbury. So North are travelling and West Coast are only travelling a little bit. Now, that is why I think you're getting the price. If this was under the roof at Marvel or down in Tassie, North would be shorter than $1.59, $1.60. They just would be. So West Coast, $2.37. Now, there's two games coming up, Aaron. I just want to have a look. I saw a discrepancy, and we owe it to the listeners and the viewers to say it now. I was looking at our friends Bet Sniper, and there's two games where there is a decent discrepancy of around a goal in the total points market. The two bookmakers are SB and Lads. One is at 165.5, which is SB. One's 170.5, which is Lads. There's a similar discrepancy in the Carlton Essendon game, which we'll touch on as well. I don't know if it'll be available when this goes out, but I just want to call it because if you like the over or unders, give yourself a goal head start on one of those lines. It's up to you which one. Harrow, let's talk about the game.
Actually, Wally, I thought this was Hobart.
There you go, mate.
Which is interesting because I think there was some weather predicted for Hobart. But actually looking on the...
Yeah, you can ignore that. It's Hands Oval in Bunbury.
It says HO. Hands Oval. I'm just thinking it was made at Hobart.
Hobart Oval.
Not bad.
Hobart. That's fair. That's fair.
So, look, I don't know much about what the Hands Oval will be like actually. So I'm a bit lost with that one. But I look at these two teams and I know West Coast have improved a lot in the last 5-6 weeks. And, Scotty said as much in his press conference, actually, after they beat West Coast, he was really impressed with them. Mate, Nixie was really impressed with them as well after Adelaide beat them by 10 goals. So they're definitely making strides. And we saw they had their win against the Saints as well a few weeks ago. So they're really not going too bad, West Coast. They've obviously had a bunch of role changes. They changed their completely flipped their midfield mix. And also you look at their injury list to see that they're going, as well as they are with the blokes they've got out. And it's actually a credit to them. North, I'm also keeping them on watch a little bit because they had a heap of role changes in their team before their bye, and I'm not sure how they're going to roll out after their bye. So I've got, there's quite a few unknowns in this one, mate. I'm not sure I've got a bet. I probably need to put a bit more work into this one, try and get my head around the venue. I thought this was being played at Hobart, and I was really keen on North Melbourne at the -8.5, as you can imagine. But this, this being a game in basically a home game for West Coast does change things appreciably, mate. So I don't know why West Coast are playing a home game at Bunbury. North. Yeah.
This is what we spoke about at the start of the year. North Melbourne sold 2 games to WA, one against West Coast, one against Freo. That was one of the other reasons I liked Freo to get into a really good position after the season, because they get the dual games in terms of the derbies or the derbies. They had a relatively easy fixture at Gather Round, and then they get this fixture against North. So I'm like, you're banking like 3 games that you wouldn't usually get at home against 3 of the worst sides in the comp, and so your travel's reduced. I'm looking at the dimensions. The dimensions, it says, are 165 by 135. So comparing that to the MCG, which are 160 by 140.
Mate, I've actually just looked the ground up. I've got a history.
It looks slightly.
Actually.
There you go. Well, it looks slightly longer and slightly narrower than the MCG.
This ground. I did my knee playing cricket on this ground.
Harrow.
I just looked it up. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Terrible. I dislocated my kneecap playing cricket here. So that brings back some memories for me, some not too good ones. But I don't remember it being a big ground, that's for sure. But yeah, look, I'm going to have to go back to work on this game, and I'll put something out for the punters once I've had a proper look. So apologies there, guys.
Sorry, punters. You forgive, mate. You got the train home on the weekend. All right, so again, we say it every week. Jump on X, jump on Twitter, have a look, footyfgpod. Closer to the game, we'll promise there'll be more info in regards to that. All right, Sunday night, because it's a long weekend, we've got the Sunday night game, which is fantastic. How good Sunday night footy. Your Baggers taking on Essendon. Carlton's $1.44. Essendon's $2.80. There's another discrepancy here on the totals with SB and Lads. Sportsbet $1.60, $166.5. And Lads 100. I'll get Lads up now. Lads because that's just changed again. I believe it's 172.5.
I did see it at 170.
So I just want to make sure that's correct.
And I thought, geez, that's nice, but obviously that's not going to last too long.
Yeah. So there is a big discrepancy in regards to that. We're seeing those, and as I said, like, just have a look. This is what BetSniper does, though, Harrow. If you jump on BetSniper, you're able to see this stuff. So that has been reined in now. Okay, they're both 100, and they're both down too. They're both into 162 or 163.5. So have we spoken about this? Like these have, even SB's prices come right down in this game. So this is one that is now very much unders. How did you see it?
The Bombers supporters out there weren't too happy with me rating them around the West Coast level. In last week's podcast, I got plenty of feedback from that. But, to be fair to the Bombers guys, a lot of it does have to do with the amount of injuries you've got. Why I would consider the Bombers in a similar level to these teams that are also down the bottom. And it's not really... if everybody had their full squad available, I'm sure the Bombers would be rating a lot higher than that. But the fact is, like, their injury list is shocking right now, and especially it's all their key position players. So they've been really harshly treated there. Now, and you look at Carlton here, and they've got 2 key forwards who should be absolutely licking their lips this week. I mean, they're going to get some real... I think, like, Redmond's probably going to have to play on Curnow or something. I'm not too sure. I know Laverde will probably match up on Harry Mackay. I mean, Harry will like that. I don't know how they're going to get their matchups down there. So that pretty much just rules out. I guess can't be backing a team that doesn't have strong key position players. It can just be such a big issue, especially the ease at which you get your goals. This, for me, is all about the injury lists of the teams, and Carlton are likely to be able to field possibly their strongest team for the year this week, with quite a few players coming back in. And especially, like, I know he's not a big-name player. He maybe goes under the radar, but Jack Silvani had been having a great season for the Blues. He'd been having a great effect on Wiedering, really freeing him up as well. And when he went out of the side, it sort of affected Wiedering's form as well. And he had to play on someone again, and he didn't look as good. But I think he'll come back in The Blues have also got a few others coming back in. So they'll put a pretty good team on the park against a really undermanned Bombers. I think that this is shaping as a bet for the Blues. As poor as the Blues' form is recently, I think it is poor. Like, they lost to Sydney. Sydney are going terrible. They lost to GWS. GWS also not going great. So it's something you got to treat with a bit of, it's a little bit of speculation based on putting your coach's hat on and looking at the matchups and whatnot. I think Carlton will probably be a little bit re-energised off their bye. They looked like they needed it a little bit, so we'll see there. But, I feel like it can't hurt them. If you look at other areas of the ground, I think we're going to see Setterfield, playing a pretty hard role on Cripper. And Cripper, he doesn't have a huge record against the Bombers. Also, Zach Merritt. I think we're going to see Hewitt with Merritt. And Merritt's last 5 games against the Blues, he's only got 21, 18, 26, 25 and 17. So maybe not expect such a big day from Zach Merritt as what we maybe saw last week. So treat him with a bit of caution. One guy that's just getting the footy. I can't nail what this guy's role is. He just seems to pop up everywhere you look, and it's Nick Martin. I think they name him on a half-forward line, and he basically he plays almost 100% game time too. So you don't have the worry of him getting stuck on the bench like we see sometimes, Wally. But I don't know what his role is, but he's getting heaps of the ball. Yeah. And I know that wingers against Carlton do really well. And so he's a guy that I would like to support. Apart from that, look, I did have some notes here on under 175, but obviously that line's now right down. And for me here, I'm going to focus on the Carlton key position players to have a big game. And I think with, De Koning, fresh in the ruck against, Goldstein, I think De Koning will probably get right on top there. Give the Blues key ball users first use and get it down to those 2 big guys. I think that'll be too much, and I'm pretty keen on the Blues, mate.
Yep. There you go, Harro. I think we know why it's come down now. The forecast across Saturday, Sunday and Monday is up to 10 or 15 mil rain on each day. So there's rain either side of it as well. Winds 25 to 35 Ks each day, 90% chance of rain. So even if they're wrong by a day, which we know they love to do, the bomb, but they also like to be wrong by their percentages. Look, they're having 2 cracks at this. Even if they're wrong by the day or wrong by the amount of rain, I think that there is every chance we're going to see some average conditions, and that adding to night footy as well, which we've spoken about, and just the over average nights. That worries me a little bit with the Carlton key forwards. If it's windy and it's raining at night, I'm not as keen, but I think that what it does, that was 172.5 that line and 166.5 at Sportsbet less than an hour ago. That is now 162 pretty much everywhere. So that's interesting. This is,
just before we did this, and that has changed in the last couple of hours, that forecast. So yeah.
This is what they do, mate. This is what we got, Harro. This is what we're dealing with here. Don't worry about us. No need to get on. People don't need to get on X and ask us about our hit rates. All right, they can go call up the Bureau of Meteorology and ask them about theirs. Because they don't nail no weekend rain trains. I'll tell you what, Harro. There's no $22 winners from the bomb.
I'll just be going old school.
Goodness. All right.
The nearest fish and chip shop to the ground. See what the weather's doing.
That's it, Harro. That's what you do. Ring a fish and chip shop near where they are and say, oh, is it raining out there? Love that. Love that. Because that does not, the sky doesn't lie, mate. All right. Big Freeze, love Big Freeze. This is a great day. One of the greatest men we've had in our game, Neil Danaher, obviously, has started this, and his family have been the custodians of the Big Freeze for over 10 years now. And it's really cool. I've got my son now. He absolutely loves it. He's at the age where he starts talking about it and looking forward to it. A few years ago, Sean Burgoyne went down in a Spider-Man costume, and my son lost his mind because the Hawthorn Football Club and Spider-Man were like combined. That's everything, right? So ever since then, he wants to watch it each year. So we get excited about it. I really wish Melbourne had to put up a better fight. How good would it have been if Melbourne came out and did the job we thought they would against the Saints? Coming into this, we could have got more excited about it. it's not saying they can't turn up and play a good game of footy. We've seen some great editions of this, but Collingwood just looks so structured, so organised, and just so strong at the moment. They're $1.26. The D's are $3.90. The line is 4 goals. The total again it's not massive. It's 169.5. But as I say that, I'm just having a look to see if that's moved. Yeah, that was an area. It's 165.5 now.
Yeah, all these forecasts
165.5.
I think in the last couple of hours, so that's fine. Yeah, I think we'll just play the weather on the day and play those total points bets on the day as they come through. So I wonder how it changes that Geelong Gold Coast as well. So keep that in mind because we like the overs in that as well. With these forecasts now changing, that could be affected too. So as with everything we say on the pod, it's like, last week, things need to play out. We do these on a Tuesday. So I think there was one, Toby Green we spoke about last week. And then all of a sudden Josh Kelly gets named, so that changes things, doesn't it? So the weather is another thing that I know we spoke about Josh Tracy the other week, kicking goals against Port, that he ended up playing in a wet weather game. So, I think I sort of encourage the punters to listen to what we're saying, but then also, assess it closer to game day as well, see if anything's changed from what we've said on the pod, whether it's the weather, whether it's team changes, all that sort of thing, all worth, considering yourself as well. Now, this one, I mean, if you just watched last week's 2 games, you'd be like, pies by how much, But we know it doesn't really
10
always
goals.
work like
Done.
that. So I actually still don't mind the pies, though, the 4 goal, with the 4 goal, giving a 4 goal start. Having said that, if you took away the D's last game and just looked at their previous 2, you probably wouldn't be taking that bet. So I come into this one, with mainly looking to focus on our disposal guys. And we know, basically it's both sides through the midfield is where they're both going to give it up. And so I'm happy to play really, and especially with the pies. I think Ned Long's a guy that's really found some form. And if you can get him at a good price for 20, they seem to be expanding his role every week as well. He just seems to be getting better. And whether that means that Pendles is going to be getting a little bit less and Ned Long's taking over that mantle a little bit, that could be something that's going on there as well. So keep an eye on those sort of things. I know Long got more time in there than Pendles on the weekend. He got 24. Pendles only got the 22. So things are shifting a little bit, but it's such a great tackler. He puts so much pressure on in there.
11. He had 11 tackles last week, Harro.
He's just found one, out of nowhere, really. I'm not sure that they had him in their best side coming into 2025. So, well done, Sam. I'll tell you what I was thinking in the D's game as well. It was I think I said something like this too, the D's have all the cattle, and I'm not sure their coach is actually, great. And he comes up against a mastermind
fair enough
in Ross
too.
Lyon. I thought it was really evident that Ross just ran rings around him in the coach's box. And it made me think back because I've watched all of those, those grand final docos where they go inside the coach's box and stuff like that. You've seen them? Yeah, well, I took a bit away from this because
mate.
I watched the Richmond Geelong game, and the whole time Hardwick's talking about how they can neutralise Geelong's +1, and it was all really technical, and quite measured. They weren't getting too excited. Scott in the other box was the whole game. Both coaches are trying to just manipulate this +1, really make sure they got the right player. It was really interesting stuff. Then I watched the Melbourne v Bulldogs one, where Melbourne obviously won the game, and Goody's down on the boundary. He's basically a cheerleader. He's just high-fiving blokes, cheering goals, slapping blokes on the arse when they come off, giving them a hug if they've had a bad, 5 minutes, literally just cheering. And Uze, I think, is the man that was behind that premiership from a tactical point of view. And No,
that's a
mate,
massive
this is how I
call.
see it. Anyway, I don't know the inside of these clubs. This is just how I
Yeah,
view
fair
it.
enough too. Fair enough. But mate, you are Uze's first
okay.
public supporter here.
Yeah, okay.
He's copped a lot of shtick. He has, but he's copped stick since from the no aura comment to what's he doing? Why isn't he playing all more for in the mids? Why are we making moves? Why does it take so long? Is he the guy? He's not going to be there next year. There's been a lot of that. For you, that's the Harro. This is a big moment for Adam. He'll be rapt to hear this
for no reason. And all these people
I know.
on the inside
I don't disagree.
of the AFL community, they all know who's really running the show. And I've got a feeling like if Goody's down on the boundary cheerleading, it was Uze up in the box. I'm pretty sure it was him anyway, who was making all the calls. So I find that interesting. And when I see a guy get out-coached like what I felt that Goody did on the weekend, I thought it was just stark, the way that the Saints pulled the D's apart. It's just a little thought there anyway, mate. It doesn't really have a big impact on how we're going to play this game. Look, this one's on a Monday. I'll put some stuff out on Twitter once teams are out, what I think around this one, but it's more going to be around the midfielders, playing the weather, seeing what the weather looks like, and so.
Yeah, very true. Now, Anzac Day, cast your mind back to that wet and average shitty day. Steele, Pendles, Long all got their numbers. Steele was huge. I reckon Steele side bottom may be the best wet weather player from his average and going up in that. Like he's in that Bartel discussion. Like, he's so good in the wet. And they seem to have a lot of those sort of players that are very good in the wet and just players that keep doing great things through their midfield. So this will be an absolute cracker. Harro, you've been great as always. Before you go, mate, going to need your best bet of the weekend.
Thrown a little bit with all these changes in weather and venue and everything that I might have not been on top of. But I've still got a bet that I think is really solid. And it's a little bit different this week. It's not our usual bet, but it's still a bet that I think everybody should be able to get on. And it's the Swans to go under their own individual total point line. The Swannies under 88.5, mate.
Swans under 88.5. Yeah, you can get that at just about every bookmaker. Like that's not going to be hard to get on. There'll be plenty of money in that market as well. So, and there's probably, let's be honest, the way they're going, Harro, that might have a couple of point give in it, even if it does come down a little bit. So I think that's definitely a good one to play. Swans to score under 88.5 points, Harro. Very, very good. Well, mate, thank you. As always, to all the punters out there, have a great weekend. Enjoy the long weekend. Enjoy the footy. Hopefully the punting gods are with you all.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website gamblinghelponline.org.au.